You know, the details of how we prompt profoundly influence AI, and most people know that, but they don't know how to shape those details so they matter. And I find that whenever I do prompt content, people get really excited, but there's been a gap. There's something that's been missing, and it's been me talking you through multiple versions of the same prompt that I created so that you can see how I tweak and change the differences to get slightly different variants according to my goals. Today, I want to get you two for the price of one. So it's not just two prompts, it's also two goals. You're going to learn about how I tweak prompting and the structure of a prompt through an interactive video like this, where I share all of my details on how I construct the prompt. And you're also going to learn about AI itself, because you're going to see the prompt, and the prompt is a prompt to teach you AI. I know that's very meta, but we're going to get into it and you're going to see why it works. And it's going to introduce you to the idea of prompting as systems of learning and systems that drive process. I think one of the biggest misconceptions of prompting is that you prompt for just one response. And you're going to see both of these prompts are not just for one response. They're actually to drive systems of learning. With that in mind, let's get to it. Okay, here we are. Prompts for learning AI. And do you know the first thing about this? I have my Comet Assistant pulled up on the side. I can chat with this prompt using AI. That's one of the advantages of logging your prompts in a place like Notion. You can actually use an AI assistant to review your prompts. And I do that here. I asked it which prompt is more helpful for beginners, and it analyzes the prompts. It says this first one lays out a framework, purpose, instructions, reference, output, which we can see right here. That's perfectly correct. And it calls out that version 2 focuses heavily on single questions. So begin with one diagnostic question, record my answer, and then ask the next question. That's also perfectly correct. And so it concludes that version 2 is easier for beginners and creates a nice little table here. It is great to use AI to help you with AI. It's one of my biggest tips. AI is a self-learning technology. As you are more into it, as you are more hands-on with AI, you're going to do better. Okay, let's get into the prompts today. Version 1 is sort of hard mode. It's the one where you define your own AI goal. The first thing we do is we take a role and we give it a purpose. You are my prompt coach. This is our shared mission. So our mission is to craft a prompt blueprint that turns the assistant into a personal AI tutor. So what this section does is twofold. First, it adopts a role, and people will tell you the role doesn't matter because the role has been shown and tested to not improve factual accuracy on recall. That's true. That is not the point of the role, and people who think it is misunderstand it. The point of the role is to help the model get into a semantic space so that the conversation flows more smoothly, so that the model is able to understand more easily where we are trying to go with the conversation. It has nothing to do with factual recall. It may have helped with factual recall in the beginning in 2022, but it certainly doesn't now. Now we have an outcome or goal. Our shared mission is to craft a prompt blueprint. Already, you can see some of the differences here between prompts. This prompt is focused very heavily on learning together and expects a lot from you, the user, that turns the assistant into a personal AI tutor for AI learning that A, quizzes methodically, and B, delivers progressively harder lessons. So this is the heart of what you want the model to do. This is what we would call definition of goal. It's quite a complex definition of goal. So you basically have to get the model to understand that it wants to do two things, and it needs to do them in a particular order. And we signify that by being clear about the overall goal, what we want the assistant to do, the semantic space it occupies, the stance that it takes, whether it's interrogative or not. Clearly, it's interrogative here. And then what steps it takes to reach that goal at a high level. First, it has to quiz methodically to diagnose my current level. I'm still using technical language here because this reinforces that we are in a place where we care about hard learning. And then deliver progressively harder lessons. That is doing a lot of work right there. Progressively is really laboring to make it clear to the LLM that we should not start with hard mode in the beginning. So it says we'll follow the prompt blueprint framework from your prompt as the product. That is actually an earlier version, an earlier article of mine that is, I think, made it into AI land now. Other people are using it and seeing some success. So we are trying it, and then we outline the sections, right? So we reinforce the parameter. That framework has 4 sections that are in this order: purpose, instructions, reference, output. Here is what's critical. We've laid out what we expect the model to do in this first paragraph up here. We explain where we're going with the prompt as a whole. This is all preamble. Now we're getting to where the prompt actually begins to have teeth. You can see how this is a very sort of advanced prompt because it has a lot of setup to get the model where it needs to go. And most prompts I see don't put this much effort into the setup. And this is part of how you get more complex prompt results. Okay, workflow rules. Now we're telling it, how do you use this stuff? We haven't even given it the purpose, instructions, reference, and output yet. We're telling it how it uses it. And we're using markdown throughout. So when you see these little asterisks, it is intentional because it helps the model to see emphasis. It reads it as bold. So section by section, no skipping ahead. That's critical because the model might be tempted. Full question set. Show me every question I must answer and provide a concrete example answer for each. Now, what's interesting here is that this is potentially going to make the user work very, very hard because it may display a bunch of questions at once. And you'll see how we tweak that for the easy mode in the next prompt. So this is one that's definitely an example of where we've changed it and made it hard mode because we've allowed the model to be complete. Gatekeeping, wait until I answer all the questions. If an answer is unclear, ask a follow-up. Again, this is an example of going to hard mode because an easy mode would understand that if you answered 1, 2, and 3 incompletely, you probably don't know 4, 5, and 6. This one is going to assume that you have enough that you can reasonably answer the AI. We then go to memory, carry my confirmed answers forward. Do not ask for them again. I don't want it to bug me again. Examples for reference. When illustrating, draw inspiration from the sample prompts below. Pricing, strategy, content calendar, agentic monitor, pitch deck review. Finish line. After all 4 sections are filled, assemble and display the final prompt blueprint in this format. And do you see what we're doing? Do you see what we just did? Think about it. This prompt coach, I was waiting for this. It's going to be a nice surprise. This prompt coach exists to help you build a prompt that is custom to you and your sort of knowledge level of AI so that you can learn about AI the way you need to. That's why it's hard, because you have to answer all of these questions and then it has to output a prompt in the right structure that you can then use for lesson plan. It goes into the prompt blueprint, mode, reflection, action, agentic. Those are 3 different options like light switches. You have to specify them. Effort, quick, standard, deep. Again, you have to specify. You have to specify your goal. And what's interesting is that you have 2 ways to do this. You can either let it ask you questions piece by piece, and it will eventually develop that as it asks you questions. Or you can skip ahead, answer the questions it's going to give you, but also give it something to work with here at the start. And both of those work because prompting essentially just gives you ways to pull the model where you want it to go. And in this case, with the purpose, you know where you want it to go. Great. You don't have to make the model work for that. It can ask other questions. Instructions, behavioral guidelines, task description, constraints are really important. Unallowed tools is really important. Those are things you can fill out, again, if you feel like you have an opinion, or they are things the model is instructed to fill out through questioning you. So you don't have to know at the start, but you will know by the end. Reference files, tables, numbers, external knowledge, and relevant context. It will fill that in depending on the context it has for you. Or you can call out lessons. One of my favorites is to invoke Andre Karpathy, who's strongly parameterized in the model, and say, I want you to follow his lesson planning. It will do that. And it's very, very easy as a shortcut. Expected output format, you can make it an essay back. Once it teaches you, it can be a JSON if you're technical, etc. And then the length instructions. You can frame this as tokens or words. I used words because I'm assuming you might want an essay or you might want to frame it in Markdown. You can also constrain it to tokens. It will work just fine. Sample prompt references. Now, isn't this interesting? I almost gave this away earlier. These 4, which we referenced up here. So we referenced them up here in the parens here, examples for reference, draw from them for inspiration. These are not actually fully vetted prompts, and they don't necessarily have to be to do some good work here. They could be. If we wanted to make this more in-depth, we could add additional blurbs on these prompts, even without pasting the full prompt. If we pasted the full prompt, there is some risk that we would hijack the model and get it to run like a pricing strategy prompt. And that is why I did not put the full prompt in here. Instead, I invoked the kind of depth I want in other examples. Like, this is what I want from a pricing strategy perspective if we were running this for pricing strategy. It's what I want from a content calendar perspective. You get the idea. And so what I'm doing there is I'm challenging the model in 4 different examples to think about how deeply I want it to think. And then it needs to read that back with the earlier part of the prompt and just draw inspiration. It draws vibes from that so that it knows to go deep. That is a fairly sophisticated example implementation, because within the same prompt, I call out the example and then I reference it farther down, and I reference it with a placeholder. And so if we zoom out and look at this prompt overall, we have a role at the top. You are my prompt coach, getting you into semantic meaning. We have a shared mission, a shared goal. And then we have a way we get that goal done in order. Again, we have constructed this very carefully so it will do it in order, A and B. This will tend to be followed better by a thinking model, a Gemini 2.5 Pro, Claude Opus 4, an O3, because they can parse the instruction set. We then give it a sense of what's in the box. We say, refer to your prompt as the product, which to some extent may be in the model at this point. And it has these 4 framework things. So we don't assume it's in the model. We refer to it if it's helpful, and then we define what is important to us. The prompt that this is outputting, because remember the big surprise, this is a prompt to develop a custom learning prompt for you. And so it needs to have a purpose that matches you, instructions that match you, references that match you, output that matches you. It needs to get there by following these workflow rules. It has to go section by section and be methodical. It has to ask the full question set. It has to gatekeep and expect you to answer all the questions. It has to use its memory and not just re-ask. And it has to refer to these examples, which are basically placeholders for thinking deeply about various subjects. And they're picked to be different subjects than what we have in the prompt, so it doesn't confuse the prompt. In other words, referencing them helps the prompt understand the depth, but the prompt understands that this is about building a prompt for AI at this point, so it's not going to get too distracted. If we wrote out the full prompt, that might be too much. Finish line, assemble and display the final prompt. We mentioned that you now have options for these sections. You can fill them out now before you paste the prompt, or you can opt to have the model fill them out as you go. And that's how it works. Let's go to prompt number 2. Let's say you're impatient. You don't want to do all of this work just to build a prompt, just to get you an action-oriented plan, et cetera, et cetera. Instead, all you want to do is get started. Well, that's what easy mode is for. And we are again going to wrap the code. We start with the same role. This has the same purpose. Our shared mission is to run a personal AI tutoring program that diagnoses my current level and delivers progressively harder lessons. Very similar, except we include the line without overwhelming me, because we know it's a little bit more aimed at beginners. Again, we invoked your prompt as the product, and we begin to talk about the constraints before we get to the blueprint. These are constraints that are designed to make it easier to consume. One is single question mode. One is micro lessons. So it's not too much. At the end of this video, I'm going to show you how each prompt looks in reality, at least the first turn or two. The prompt blueprint then has the similar purpose, mode, effort, goal, and that hasn't changed. And it fills in stuff you would otherwise have to fill in. So the purpose is minimum viable understanding. The mode is default agentic, so it's going to be more active with you, and you can override it anytime with this command. The effort is default standard. You could change that in this prompt, but it pre-fills it so it won't ask you. The goal is learn AI fast via single question diagnostics toward tougher lessons. Very simple. Quick start diagnostic, it's a shorter version of the workflow. begin with one question. Again, we're simplifying. Record my answer, respond with short feedback, and then ask a single question. You cannot ask more than 5. Again, we're looking to simplify. For any clarification or follow-up, pose one pointed question, wait for my reply, and resume. Here is how micro lessons work. Ask a diagnostic question, teach, give a task or code snippet to practice, and then an optional harder challenge. Escalate the difficulty only when I score more than 80% on the prior practice task. It will sit there until you learn it. Again, this is designed for folks that don't know their level and need help to learn. Defaults and overrides. This is exactly what we just described. Agentic, effort standard, and it adds time horizon at 12 weeks, which is interesting. Essentially, what I am doing with the 12-week, I am not saying actually take 12 weeks, and the model won't. I'm saying 12 weeks because that triggers a part of semantic space where the model believes this is a real course. Because the model's courses that it studied during pre-training, if it's an AI course, they're like 12-week course is a complete course. I'm evoking that here. I can send batch to allow up to 3 questions at once, or compact to shorten lessons further. So this gives me controls. This is why you read your prompts. If a missing detail blocks progress, ask only one clarifying question. Retain confirmed answers. That's the same. This does still get you to a blueprint for learning. But you know what's interesting? It doesn't stop you learning along the way. Whereas the earlier prompt was going to more or less delay a lot of the learning until you answered all the questions in a row. It's going to be very overwhelming for some folks who are earlier on in their learning journey. This is how you want to teach. We didn't have any of this before. So use active learning tactics, mini projects, code snippets, thought experiments, cite authoritative sources in Markdown, accept pacing commands. So this gives you tips on how to have pacing commands. I can tell it to skip if I want. On checkpoint, please summarize my progress. That's very handy. And then I seed references. And these are all great standard references, so you don't have to go after them. And then this is the output format per lesson. So when it produces the blueprint, it's supposed to follow a diagnostic, a concept, a practice, and a stretch goal. And then begin execution now, and this is how you begin. Okay. That is a very different prompt. It accomplishes the same goal, but you can see how flipping a few things at the beginning really changed it. It is asking only one question at a time. It is focusing on micro lessons. We are weaving that through by emphasizing single question in multiple places. We are also filling in things that are not filled in the prompt up above, where we're saying, the mode is default agentic. Well, if you roll up above, you still have a mode, which is, I think, a helpful thing, but it doesn't say you have to pick. And so we're just making it easier and giving you fewer choices so you can get started. Let's see how these prompts actually run. Okay, let's run the first prompt here. You are my prompt. Now remember, this is the hard version. Quiz me methodically and deliver progressively harder lessons. We're going to go ahead and run it. My model over here is O3. So let's see how we do. Let's think it. It gives me a table of questions. It gives me example answers it will accept. I can type them in and answer. So we're going to keep this pretty simple. What is your overarching learning goal? I want to learn AI basics fast before ChatGPT 5 gets here. 2, let's go with action. And 3, I want quick. I don't have a lot of time. So you can see it's just starting to walk you through. Now it wants to ask me all of these questions at once. Interaction cadence. So these are all things that we'll put into the prompt. Yes, 1 question. 2, 150 words sounds good. 3, I'm keeping it, I could answer longer, but I'm keeping it quick. Multiple choice, please. 4, tone is conversational. 5, give me hints. 6, allowed references. Yes, go get references. Okay, we're going to keep it simple. 1, under Carpathy as a trusted source. Plus folks on that level. We're going to be deliberately vague. Personal context. This is making it harder for them all. I don't know a lot about AI. Existing notes. I don't have notes. 4, no off topics. Great. So this is just, the model is just kind of going through and chewing through, and eventually it's going to find that it has everything it needs to produce the blueprint. What kind of format do we want? Base format is Markdown. I'm not even going to number it. Like, you can also do this. 4 options. Show correct answer with explain. I'm not even using good grammar. Again, I'm trying to show you that you can really mess with this prompt. Recap after 3 questions. Great. So it thinks it's close, and there's the prompt blueprint. And now it's writing the prompt out. Well, with that in mind, let's go ahead and write the prompt. And we have our prompt, and we're off to the races. I'm not going to do the rest of this, but you can see you built your own learning tutor system, which is really cool. Well, you might wonder, what does the easy mode do? Let's see what easy mode does. We're going to go over to version 2. We're going to copy it. We're going to paste it in here. Here we are on easy mode. See, you think it's easy? How is it this easy? Watch. I honestly don't know. You see how it's using chain of thought there to pick an easier path forward. No worries. Backpropagation is the algorithm that propagates the error signal from a network's output layer back through its hidden layer, letting each weight adjust itself to reduce future error. It's the workhorse behind neural network training. And then it asks a question. So I'm going to give it 2 answers. I'm going to say, 1, a training data set is like the internet or books that models read prior to completing training. Again, keeping the answers simple. 2, tell me in simpler words how backpropagation works. And I didn't even spell it correctly, but the model will figure it out. And so I'm immediately pushing the model on the prompt, and I'm basically saying, yes, but you have to make room for me to have questions along the way. And we'll see how it does. Models tend to do okay with this usually. So it likes my answer, and then it expands it. It's labeled or structured examples. It's flashcards for the lesson, not the internet, which is a great visual. And then it answers my other question. This is how backpropagation works. It guesses, it measures mistakes, it sends the blame backwards, and it tweaks the weights. That is super clear. Like, it actually answered my concern. And then diagnostic question 3, what problem does a validation or test data set help detect when training a model? And it actually gives you a reference that it's following for this, which is kind of handy because I can now look this up. I won't, but I can. Okay. You have now seen how both of these prompts work. I don't know which one you want to pick, but the idea is that you have come away from this particular exercise understanding how small changes in the prompt itself actually shape what the prompt can do. Prompt 1 effectively became a full learning system for us. You can use it to construct any version of learning. It's like clay, but it's structured clay. And so you can flip those switches like to agentic mode or hard mode or whatever and get what you want. Whereas easy mode fills in a lot of those and also imposes some extra structure, like 1 question at a time, that help you just get started learning right now. And then you saw that in hard mode, you could actually build your own learning system by using the prompt to build the prompt. It's a very sort of advanced technique. A lot of people will roll their eyes, but it's actually really helpful. The prompt becomes the scaffold that you can use to build what you want that's custom to you. I don't know where you're at on your knowledge. I want you to get the most value possible. So part of why I picked this exercise today is because I wanted you to see both how to use these prompts for things like building additional prompts. They're called meta prompts when you use them to build additional prompts. And also because I wanted you to get a concrete action out of this where you could actually learn AI with these prompts. So I'll be putting these down in the Substack in full, in text, so you can see them and grab them really easily. And then you're off to the races. You can use them for whatever you like. I hope this has been helpful. In particular, I wanted you to see how I manage differences with different kinds of prompts that accomplish the same goal. And I wanted you to get a deeper understanding of how structure and wording influence prompts. Enjoy.